Oral questions by members.
Member Prince George Valemount.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Day after day, we continue to watch as illegal blockades are having a devastating impact on the livelihood and lives of British Columbians and Canadians. In fact, we've just learned that as we speak, there is a blockade on a rail line near Spruce Grove, Alberta, stopping all rail traffic west to Prince Rupert and Vancouver. Yesterday, the Sierra Club of British Columbia issued a statement in solidarity with, and I quote, resistance and blockades, end quote. This is an organization that the Minister of the Environment knows well. Not only is he their former executive director, but he's met with them regularly over the past 2 years. With that in mind, will the Minister stand up today and denounce those that promote and participate in the illegal protests that are wreaking havoc across our province?
Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. This is a serious issue here, not just in British Columbia, but in fact right across the country, that our government and the federal government, along with other provinces, are trying to resolve in a way that gets the trains moving in this country and eliminates rail blocks wherever they are. As we have also said, people in this country and this province have a right to peaceful protest. We support that. We do not support illegal protests. We do not support illegal blockages. And that's the position of this government, and I would hope that would be the position of the opposition. And I think I've made it really clear, member, we do not support illegal demonstrations, illegal blockages. That's why our government is working closely with the federal government to bring a resolution to this dispute, not just here in British Columbia, but indeed in the other parts of the country.
Member Prince George Valemount on a supplemental.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the comments from the Solicitor General, and I just want to reassure him our position on this matter has been very clear from day one. What is at question today is a relationship between the Minister of the Environment, who has an opportunity to stand up and to make a comment today to an organization of which he was the executive director. So let's see what else the Sierra Club...
Members, if we may hear the question, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's see what else the Sierra Club had to say. Yesterday, they described the BC Supreme Court decision to extend Coastal GasLink's injunction order as having, and I quote, perpetuated violence against Wet'suwet'en people, end quote. Last week, they repeatedly tweeted out #ShutDownCanada. These statements in opposition to the court and the rule of law are simply wrong. So the Minister has a chance today, Minister of the Environment, to stand up and send a message to the people he meets with regularly. Will he denounce the Sierra Club and those who are seeking to maximize the disruption of BC's economy and daily life?
Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I've got to say, I find it really fascinating that an opposition, at a time when this province, other provinces and the federal government are trying to find a peaceful resolution to what is a very serious issue in this province and across this country, wants to try and cast aspersions on a member of this government who has done nothing since his arrival here but to protect the interests of this province. This government's Honourable Speaker.
Members, order, please.
This government has been clear from the beginning and speaks with one voice. while we support the right of peaceful protest, we do not support illegal blockages, Honourable Speaker. That's why we continue to work with the federal government. That's why we work with other provinces. That's why we work with First Nations to ensure that we can bring a resolution to this issue that works for this province and all Canadians.
Member Abbotsford West.
Mr. Speaker, I think it is a sad day, when a Minister of the Crown, the Minister of the Environment, refuses to denounce the activities of a group that is showing a blatant disrespect for the rule of law simply because they're political friends of his.
Well, it's true. We can groan.
Organized BC is another group dedicated to the training of activists. Their director is providing active social media support for ongoing blockades. One of their trainers was an organizer of last week's activities here at the legislature and the subsequent attempt to BC government shutdown, and another individual trainer is a former NDP candidate from Ontario who is actively organizing actions with 350.org. But that apparently is not all they do. Apparently, they also provide training at taxpayers' expense to the Parliamentary Secretary for TransLink, the Minister for North Vancouver Lonsdale, or her staff, and that's what the receipt shows. Can the Minister of Housing, to whom the Parliamentary Secretary presumably reports, explain why her Parliamentary Secretary is using public money to get training from a group that seems dedicated to the disrespect of the rule of law and grinding the Canadian economy to a halt?
Members, Solicitor General, Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for that specific question the member asked. I will take that on notice.
Member Abbotsford West on a supplemental.
The Minister of the Environment has already made it clear that he refuses to denounce friends of his who are showing a disrespect for the rule of law. The Minister...
Members.
The Minister of Housing doesn't want to apparently discuss her Parliamentary Secretary's involvement with another activist organization that's up to its eyeballs in promoting a disrespect and blockade, disrespect for the rule of law. Look, if members opposite want to be activists, then leave this place and go back to being an activist. But when you're here, maybe you can do your job, do your duty, and show some respect for the rule of law. Again, to the member.
Members. Members, we shall hear the question. Thank you.
To the member to whom the Parliamentary Secretary, the member for North Vancouver Lonsdale, presumably reports, how much public money has been spent and provided to this organization that is today apparently dedicated to the disruption of the entire Canadian economy and putting thousands of British Columbians out of work? And will she stand up and do a relatively straightforward thing and announce unequivocally that no more public money will be sent to this organization?
Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As I said a moment ago in response to the member's first question, that we'll take that on notice and get the appropriate information for him. But I have to say, I find it deeply, deeply disturbing that at a time
Members.
that at a time
Members, order.
and in particular this nation, when this province, other provincial governments and the federal government are trying to find a resolution, a peaceful resolution to what is a serious situation to which we have seen all too often in the past in this country, can lead to extremely unfortunate and violent situations sometimes, to find a peaceful resolution. One would expect that the opposition would understand that their role, while sure is to criticize, is not to try and inflame a situation.
Members.
It's not to cast aspersions on people who are doing their job, their sworn oath in upholding the rules of this province, in this House, and instead, Honourable Speaker, and instead,
Members.
they might want to be part of the solution as opposed to the problem in this province.
Leader, third party.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Budget 2020 had some interesting things to say about competitiveness. Specifically, and I quote, "A key goal is to ensure that BC's leadership on climate change does not materially impair BC's business competitiveness." For many BC industries, this might be a good policy, as long as we are making strategic investments in innovation. However, this argument falls entirely apart when this government uses it to justify LNG and oil and gas sector expansion in our province. Another way of saying that we won't, quote, materially impair competitiveness is that we will ensure that the oil and gas sector in BC is able to expand. My question is for the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. How does the government reconcile its legislated requirement to meet its GHG reduction targets with policies that promote the expansion of the oil and gas sector in British Columbia?
Minister of the Environment and Climate Change Strategy. Members. Members, if we may hear the response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and to the member from Abbotsford, that's not a bad idea. Honourable Speaker, I thank the interim leader of the third party for the question, and I think the member knows well that we have a leading, if not the leading, climate plan in North America, and the member knows that because we collaborated with the Green Caucus in its preparation. And a fundamental underpinning of the Clean BC plan is to invest in people, to invest in clean energy, to invest in emission reduction in industry, and to invest in a range of things that make life better for British Columbians, more affordable for British Columbians, and cleaner for British Columbians. Budget 2020 put an additional investment of $419 million for a total of investment of $1.3 billion over a 4-year time period. That's significant, Honourable Speaker, but as the member knows, as I believe the member knows, that we all understand that moving toward a net zero carbon future in the world, in British Columbia, in Canada, is a process of transition. It is not helpful, and that is why the member knows that we focused on helping emissions-intensive trade-exposed industries to do everything they can to reduce emissions, so we don't simply displace BC jobs with greater emissions in other jurisdictions. Our Clean BC incentive program for industry does that by rewarding companies and industries that have world-leading low carbon intensity processes, and our industry fund also invests in diversifying BC's tech sector and applying that to reducing emissions throughout BC's traditional industries, as well as creating technologies that can be used here in BC and exported elsewhere, helping to build BC's economy and diversify it. Thank you.
Leader, third party on a supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, absolutely, the BC Green Caucus was very happy to participate and provide ideas for Clean BC. Unfortunately, it should be the program that we're using going forward rather than being used to provide the basis for the expansion of the fossil fuel industry. That's exactly what my questions are about. Because building a low-carbon, innovative economy won't happen overnight. But it also won't happen if we are aligning policies to support the type, if we're not aligning the type of policies that will support the type of innovation that will get us there. We can't do both things. We can't say that we're in a transition while also investing taxpayer money into LNG. This is especially true with programs like Clean BC's Industrial Incentive Program, which the Minister mentioned, when it's used as a loophole that allows the fossil fuel sector to actually expand in this province. We're moving further away from the transition, not closer. To the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, how do we justify policies that subsidize fossil fuel development in British Columbia by returning a share of their carbon tax when this is actually allowing them to expand their operations in British Columbia?
Minister of the Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And to the member, I've explained the principle behind the Clean BC Industrial Incentive, whether it applies to the gas industry, the steel industry, the metallurgical coal industry, the aluminum industry, or the pulp and paper industry. We don't see a successful climate plan in BC being one that sheds jobs while not creating new jobs and diversifying our economy. And that is at the fundamental root of the incentive program. Honourable Speaker, I don't need to talk to the member about carbon leakage because he understands that climate change is a global issue. But I won't leave it to the member or to me to make the final determination. That's why we introduced amendments to the Climate Change Accountability Act. That's why we established an independent council, which has recently been appointed, to both give us advice about how we can reduce emissions while promoting a healthy economy and reducing emissions in BC's traditional resource industries, and also to comment independently to the public on how we're doing every single year.
Hear, hear.
Member Richmond Queensborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On January 30th, 2018, the Environment Minister attended an anti-pipeline strategy group meeting on Bowen Island. In attendance were Karen Mahone, Mike Kodima, Sven Biggs, and Zipporah Berman of Stand.Earth, all who today are encouraging illegal blockades to, quote, shut down Canada. 2 years ago, the minister refused to answer this question. Will he now disavow the statements of his friends that support conflict and illegal activity?
Members, we shall hear the response from the Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And once again, I find it really surprising that an opposition at this particular point in what's facing us right now as a nation, not just here in British Columbia, right across this country, wants to try and drag people and wants to try and tear down individuals because they're saying, oh, you once worked with this organization, you once worked with this group. Well, it's kind of interesting that they're doing that because I want to remind them, Honourable Speaker, I want to remind them.
Members.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd like to remind them because they asked the questions. They asked the questions, and you know they talked about the Sierra Club, and I'd like to remind them that they worked with the Sierra Club. They worked with the Sierra Club in December 2016 for new regulations about the Great Bear Rainforest. They worked with them in 2016 on new legislation Commission on Forest Management, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
They clearly didn't have any problem working with that organization back then, but now because they think they can try and somehow score cheap political points, that that's okay. Double standard, Honourable Speaker, of
Members.
that opposition is beyond belief, and we see it on issue after issue. On one day, it's like, let's get rid of ICBC, we need private competition. The next day, they're saying, oh my God, condo owners are having a problem, get in and interfere with the market, Honourable Speaker. That's why they're sitting there, Honourable Speaker, because they bring nothing positive to the debate in this chamber.
Members. Member Richmond, Queensborough on a supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to remind the minister that these radical activists have blocked BC ferries, they blocked this legislature, they blocked rail lines, they blocked companies. They were sitting outside of the Premier's home just yesterday as well. We will stand up for law and order, unlike that side. It's a very simple question to answer.
Members. Members, order, please. We shall hear the question. Thank you.
It's a very easy question to answer, Mr. Speaker, and the minister will not get up and answer. Let me remind the minister of the Bowen Island Strategy Group document that we revealed to this House 2 years ago. It describes a structure of hives and swarms that are, quote, organized to seize a specific political moment and support mass popular resistance, end quote. For 2 years now, the Environment Minister normalized discussions with radicals who want to shut down Canada's resource industry. Will he now explicitly denounce this mass resistance and declare his support for the Coastal GasLinks project?
Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'll take no lessons on standing up for law and order from the party of Bassi and Burke and the party of Triple League. And I'll also tell
Members, we shall have order, please.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Now, when it comes to law and order, I will also remind the member that the police have a very difficult job to do in this province. And I will trust their judgment in dealing with these situations, as opposed to having an opposition that would, on the basis of their statements, direct and tell how law and order should be done, Honourable Speaker.
Members.
We have made it clear. We have made it clear as a government that speaks with one voice. Lawful protest is tolerated. Unlawful protest is just that, is illegal. That's also why, I really do find it fascinating that at a time when the Prime Minister and the federal government, the Premier of this province and our government, Premiers in other provinces, First Nations, the RCMP are trying to find a way to deal with a very complex situation that impacts this province and this country, that all we have is an opposition that wants to try and score cheap political points. And, Honourable Speaker, we're working to fix things. They're working to stay on the other side of that aisle.
Member for Skeena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Inflame the situation. It's too late for that. Members on that side already did it. We're not the ones that signed anti-LNG declarations. That side of the House did it. We're not the ones that made comments to destabilize elected band councils in BC. Members on that side made those statements. You helped this issue. And now you claim to be the ones to fix it. Right now, there are activist organizations that want to keep Indigenous people below the poverty line through misinformation and manipulation. Nobody's gone to meet with these elected band councils to hear their story. Illegal protests are aimed at shutting down opportunities that my band has fought for since 2004. In fact, it was my band that brought the LNG opportunity to this legislature. It was Christy Clark that finally listened to us and said, okay, we'll look at it. We'll follow up for you. But all we get is posturing and politics from a government that historically has been playing both sides of this issue, and stuck in the middle are average Aboriginals. My question is to the Environment Minister. Will he denounce the eco-colonialist actions of these radical groups and get Canada back on track?
Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. Nobody on this side of the House supports illegal demonstrations or blockages. We have made that clear. And the police are doing their job on that. And I'd also like to remind the member that it was this side of the House that brought that project to fruition. It's this side of the House that brought that project. Speaker, from the very first day, from the very first day that that project was successfully announced and delivered by this government, that side of the House did not like that one little bit. Because, Honourable Speaker, we recognize the opportunity that it brings to that member's riding. We recognize the opportunity that it brings for Northern British Columbia to create training for Indigenous peoples, to create apprenticeship opportunities, to create business opportunities. We want it to succeed. That's why we are working with the federal government, other provinces, the RCMP, First Nations. The Minister of Indigenous Relations was up in Wet'suwet'en territory for
Members.
You know, that attitude is exactly what is not needed. If we're to find a solution, that means having dialogue with everybody involved to get a resolution to that. We're committed to that. They're clearly not.
Member for Skeena on a supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's true, your government brought this to fruition. But you did none of the heavy lifting. In fact, in the 15 years of consultation and accommodation on all the LNG projects in BC, you aligned yourselves with environmental activists.
Listen closely.
It's in Hansard. All your statements that you made at an emergency debate in the summer of, what was it, 2015? Everything you said is on the record.
Yeah, look at it.
You also mentioned going up to meet with Hereditary Chiefs, and I asked this question last time, how many of you at the same time went to visit elected chiefs who are not bad people, that have been demonized in the press, that have been destabilized because of remarks that came from that side of the House? And now you want to try to fix the situation. What was the remark that was said? It's important to remember, elected band councils are a construct of the Indian Act meant to annihilate the Indian. Who said that? Put your hand up.
Just silent.
So, for the first time in our history, communities like mine can make decisions for ourselves to deal with our own issues on our own terms. Instead, all we get is condescending platitudes from the likes of Zipporah Berman and other activist friends of the Environment Minister. So this time it's going to be a simpler question to the Environment Minister. Whose side are you on?
Minister, Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Of course, we are facing a very serious situation.
Members.
We are facing a very serious situation in this province and in this country. And as has been mentioned already, we support the right of peaceful protest, but the disruption of the country's rail systems, infrastructure, it's a serious impact on the economy and on people's lives. And we all get that. And we all need to be working together. There is a project that has received its permits, has its environmental assessment process in place, spanning 2 governments, Honourable Speaker. The project is underway. We are working to try to de-escalate the issues that are before us, Honourable Speaker. It was mentioned I've travelled up to meet with Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs. It's more than once. I'm working closely with my federal counterpart, Minister Bennett. I met with her on Monday. We've offered both of ourselves to be there at the drop of a hat to de-escalate, to deal with these issues. We were able to work with the Gitxsan hereditary chief, Norman Stephen, who have made a wonderful offer and which we accepted, and through dialogue, we were able to de-escalate the rail blockade near New Hazelton, and I want to thank Hereditary Chief Norman Stephen for that show of good faith. And that's the kind of work we need to do, Honourable Speaker, to overcome these serious issues, and not the acrimony that's going back and forth and trying to cast blame where there may be no blame, Honourable Speaker.
The bill ends question period.